in Australia, where they're talking about banning them on government grounds, going into the State House, where Congress is located, or their government is located. I have no problem with that. But I'm a little curious that if some moderate-esque Muslims might end up getting radicalized because they feel like they're being targeted and they feel like they're being hated upon. I could be wrong here. I'll be honest, I could be wrong here. But I'm a little curious about that. I'd like somebody to do a study, if they could, to kind of see, what that looks like. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, I want to look at some of the comments that Ron Paul said earlier this week on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax.com, and the reaction to that. It's going to be a long clip, but it's worth listening to. So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. This is Saturday Night Cigar Lounge here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. We'll be back right after this.
This is the Pint-Sized Pundit, and I am here to tell you that anything Taylor says on Saturday Night Cigar Lounge is his opinion and his opinion only. He does not speak for his employer, his employer's employer, or anyone else. He especially doesn't speak for Liz unless she says so.
Hi, I'm Dustin Hoyt with America Our Way, and you can hear me right here on Vigilant Liberty Radio at 10/9 Central on Thursday nights. We bring you the best in political commentary from the right-wing, conservative, libertarian perspectives coming together and bringing the best content on the internet. Be sure to tune in every week for your favorite shows. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Hi, this is Jason Dibbler, co-host of Q with a View, heard every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on FTR Radio. Right now, FTR needs your help in making the jump into the 21st century through some long-needed equipment upgrades. This is where you, the great and loyal listeners of Great Conservative Talk Radio, can really lend a hand. Visit GoFundMe.com/helpupgradeFTR right now. Your assistance, no matter how small, will help to ensure that FTR can continue to offer some of the best conservative radio on the interwebs. Your donation of $50 gets you up to 60 seconds of airtime on FTR radio 4 times. For $100, your ad will run 10 times, or if you don't want to run an ad, you can have 30 minutes of FTR airtime to talk about anything you want. There are other thank yous for other levels of giving as well, but those are some pretty great offers. We hope you'll consider making a small donation to help keep quality conservative talk radio alive and thriving on the internet. Visit GoFundMe.com/helpupgradeFTR today. Thank you.
Hey, this is Alfonso Rachel with 20 Pound Sledge and PJTV Zone Nation, and you're listening to VLR.
And we are back here on Saturday Night Cigar Lounge here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. I am your host, Taylor Millard. And one thing I want to say before we get to the Ron Paul comments is I think Ron Paul is a horrible messenger. I really think he is. He comes off like the crazy grandpa. And he comes off like the crazy grandpa way too much. Which is why he was only a congressman and was never really had a chance at any of the presidential races that he ran in. But he made some very interesting comments on the Steve Malzberg Show earlier this week. And honestly, they're being misinterpreted. The comments that he made, they're being misinterpreted. But don't take my word for it. Hear it from the man himself. This is from the Steve Malzberg show earlier this week. So here is what Ron Paul had to say. And it's a long clip, and I apologize for it being a long clip. But let's listen to it, and then we'll go from there.
I agree with the French imam who today called the slain journalists martyrs for liberty. Today's murders are part of a larger confrontation, not between civilizations, no, but between civilization itself and those who are opposed to a civilized world.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining us now to talk about the attacks today and maybe weigh in on what the Secretary of State had to say is Dr. Ron Paul, former Texas congressman, a Republican presidential candidate, and founder of Campaign for Liberty. Doctor, Happy New Year. Great to talk to you, sir.
Well, thank you, and same to you.
All right. So, you have been very outspoken when it comes to foreign policy. I think the last conversation you and I had talked about, why they do what they do kind of thing. What's your take on what happened today?
Well, partially what the Secretary of State said it is true. This is pretty obscene when it comes to violence, and libertarians are pretty annoyed by anybody who initiates violence. This is pretty bad. But in the context of things, France has been a target for many, many years because they've been involved in foreign affairs in Libya, and they really prodded us along recently in Libya, but they've been involved in Algeria. So they've had attacks like this, not infrequently. So it does involve, their foreign policy as well. But when people do this, the rejection of the violence has to be made, and with that, I agree.
All right, but let me take it a little further here. Whether or not, the people, we don't know, we haven't had a claim of responsibility. Let's say they're either Al Qaeda or ISIS, or Al Qaeda or ISIS trained, or they did it on their own, and they're very sophisticated, apparently. But they're Al Qaeda or ISIS inspired or trained. Okay.
Right.
So every country that has a foreign policy that the animals don't like should expect that this could happen, and do you put the blame at all on the countries?
No, I put blame on bad policy that we don't fully understand, and we don't understand what they're doing because the people who are objecting to the foreign policy that we pursue, they do it from a different perspective. They see us as attacking them and killing innocent people. So yes, they have it. This doesn't justify it, so don't put those words in my mouth. It doesn't justify it, but it explains it. And this is why I always say if we had somebody do to us what we have done to so many countries in the Middle East and how many people we've killed and sending over drones and bombing, being involved in all these wars and supporting dictators one week and taking away the support, and the stupidity of us sending all those weapons into Syria, ending up in the hands of ISIS. And right now, we're even sending more weapons, because ISIS took all the American weapons. It's that overall policy which invites retaliation, and they see us as intruders. But it's a little bit more complex, when they hit us, either here at home and hit civilians, and what's happening in France. But I don't think you can divorce these incidents from the overall foreign policy.
Would you separate? Let's say ISIS or Al Qaeda says you got Hillary Clinton's running for president, or a woman is running for president. Much like the Sony thing to an extent. If you have a woman run for president, we're gonna hit you with terrorist attacks. Or if you say the Pledge of Allegiance at the Super Bowl or the national anthem at this year's Super Bowl, we're gonna hit you. Do you separate that kind of a threat and terrorist?
Yeah, but I don't think that's the real reason things happen, because we've been conditioned to believe that the only reason 9/11 happened is that we are free and prosperous. I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe all of a sudden.
So why did it happen? Why did 9/11 happen?
I think it's retaliation. I think it's blowback. The CIA indicated it's blowback. I mean,
you mean for our foreign policy again, is what you're saying?
Oh, yeah, for our foreign policy, I think it's blowback. I think it's very clearly evidenced by our own government that the radicals taking over in Iran in 1979 was a building up of anger over the Shah that we put in place in 1953. It had to do with oil, and it had to do with the abuse of the Shah, and finally the radicals. So they, when we get involved and set up dictators that the people don't like, they get pretty angry at us.
Doctor, always great to talk to you, sir. To be continued. Thank you very much for your time.
Very good. Thank you.
Dr. Ron Paul, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. We'll be back with more. Don't go away.
So what does that mean in Ron Paul's comments? And specifically, what does that mean in the reaction to it? Well, Red State was like, oh, we know exactly what it meant. In a post that was done on January 7th, the title was entitled, the piece was entitled, Ron Paul and the Paris Terror Attacks. And it has bitches bleeped out, but basically bitches had it coming. And I try to ignore Ron Paul and the spawn as much as humanly possible. But sometimes the doddering old fraud just goes too far. As to recap, Muslim terrorists, or at least everyone in the world thinks they are Muslim terrorists, stormed, except the Obama administration, stormed the offices of a Parisian magazine that happens to poke fun at Islam and its Mohammed. What lesson does Ron Paul draw from it? The French had it coming. By the most charitable standard, this is utterly deranged thinking. Actually, it's less than thinking. It is more akin to what a sunflower does when the flower follows the path of the sun. Stimulus response. The attack was carried out for the same reason that Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh was killed. It criticized Islam. There was no connection here with French foreign policy. Rather, it was caused by French domestic policy, a policy Obama seems intent on foisting upon the United States of unchecked immigration and the inability to assimilate a large and disloyal foreign minority. The only bad policy to blame here was France's domestic kowtowing to violent extremists. And then it calls him an idiot and says, in a gentler time, we'd be paying 2 pence to watch him eat bugs and fingerprint with his own feces in Bedlam. Well, I don't agree with that statement. I really don't. I think that if you have to look at it, one of the problems that you run into is the fact that, well, Ron Paul is looking at it from a long-term status. Because, let's be honest, the French have made Muslims mad at them. If you look at the French conquest of Algeria, it started in 1839 and went all the way to 1847. And in fact, if you look at what the Ottoman Empire thought, the Ottoman Empire said that Ottoman Africa still existed, at least the Algerian part of it, was still part of Africa, was still part of their empire, even in 1905 when the French had been there for almost 50 years. So, in that situation, I think that you did have, I think you can look at past interactions. Ottoman Empire, they provided great furniture. Thanks, Randy. I think that you can sit there and you can say, hey, maybe some of that is a part of it. Is it a large part of it? I think that Paul may be overlooking it a little bit. But at the same time, I think that one of the reasons why there may be some inflaming and some people mad is because of the history